My name is Dorothy May Linwood, and I am 81 years old. I've lived through a lot of things: dust storms in Nebraska, the loss of my husband to pancreatic cancer, and the slow fading of friends over decades. But nothing, not even grief, prepared me for the moment I heard the bolt slide shut from the top of the stairs. I was in my son's basement, cold concrete under my feet, a bare bulb swinging above my head, and a rusted space heater humming like it was gasping for breath. He locked me in. Me, his mother. Not because I was dangerous, not because I was ill, but because his wife, Charmaine, said she couldn't stand the way I looked. She gives off that smell, she whispered once, thinking I couldn't hear. That old, sour, tragic look. My kids don't need that energy. I had come to live with them after I'd slipped on black ice behind my trailer home. I'd broken my hip. The doctor said I couldn't live alone anymore. Nathan said, "Come home, Ma. We got you." I believed him. That was a mistake. What started as small things, like them hiding my clothes or ignoring my questions, turned into full-blown control. I wasn't allowed upstairs when guests came. Charmaine told people I was visiting cousins in Tulsa. She changed the locks on the fridge, hid the landline, took away my cell phone because I kept pressing buttons wrong. The basement door became my ceiling. And Nathan, my son, the boy I once held in my arms through croup and chickenpox, he turned the bolt without even meeting my eyes. "We'll bring your meals down," he said flatly. "Just rest, Ma. Stop being dramatic." But that night, as I sat in the dark holding a worn photo of my late husband and listening to their laughter above me, something broke inside me. Not my bones. My silence. I wasn't going to die in that basement. And I certainly wasn't going to let the woman who married my son erase me from my own bloodline. But how could I fight back with no money, no power, and no one who believed me? That's when I remembered something. The house they were living in? It wasn't technically theirs. And I had the papers, still buried in a metal box somewhere in this basement. What I found next in that box would change everything. The metal box was right where I had left it nearly 15 years ago, behind a wall panel near the washer, covered in lint and spiderwebs, but still locked tight. It was a box my husband built himself. Theodore Linwood was a machinist by trade and a quiet genius in all things mechanical. When we bought the house in 1974, he told me, "Always keep a copy of the deed. Don't trust digital files. Paper can outlive memory." Back then, we never imagined Nathan would grow up to treat his mother like clutter. I sat on a folded towel in that cold basement, fingers trembling as I entered the code. Our anniversary, 0612. Click. Inside the box were 5 things. A faded wedding photo, a copy of the original deed to the house, a notarized agreement transferring ownership to me alone after Theodore passed, a bank savings book with an old balance of $1,742, and a handwritten letter. The letter stopped me cold. It was from Theodore. "If you're reading this, Dottie, then something's gone wrong. I didn't leave the house to Nathan yet for a reason. You always loved people too much, even when they didn't deserve it. If anyone ever makes you feel less than queen of this home, remember, you are the rightful owner. Use it. Don't ask. Just act." I stared at that page for minutes, maybe hours. It was like my husband had reached through time to remind me that I still had worth. So while Nathan and Charmaine slept in my bedroom, warm under my roof, I started planning. The first thing I did was tear out a page from the back of the bank book and write down everything I needed to do. Find a way to get upstairs when they were out. Access the county clerk's office and reconfirm the deed. Call Edna, my best friend from church, the one they didn't know I still spoke with. Do it all without letting them suspect a thing. It would take patience, precision, quiet revenge. But I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every elderly woman who was ever silenced, shut away, or made to feel like their wrinkles made them worthless. I stayed quiet for 2 more days. Let them bring me food on paper plates. Let them ignore the smell of mold growing under the water heater. Let them believe they'd won. Until the morning they left for a weekend spa getaway. That's when I made my move. I pushed a stool under the tiny basement window and slipped my hand through the cracked screen. After 20 minutes of work, I managed to wedge the latch free. I climbed out, aching hip and all, and stood barefoot in the backyard for the first time in 3 months. The grass had changed. The trees were blooming, but the house still looked the same. Except this time, I wasn't a guest. I was the owner, and I was done being forgotten. What I did next in the living room would shock even my late husband. I stood there, breathing in the sweet summer air, feeling the grass beneath my feet like it was the first taste of freedom. The neighborhood was still asleep. A few sprinklers hissed. A squirrel darted across the fence. But inside my heart, it was loud with purpose. I hobbled back into the house through the unlocked back door. The scent of lavender and lemon candles filled the kitchen, Charmaine's favorite cover-up. But the house had changed since I lived in it. Everything sterile, pale gray and white, like they wanted to erase the warmth that once lived here. I walked slowly through the living room, past the family portraits they had updated. There were no pictures of me, not even one. But that was okay, because by the time they got back, I was going to make sure they never forgot me again. I found my old address book in the laundry room drawer, buried under coupons and expired pizza flyers. With shaky fingers, I dialed Edna from the landline. Yes, the one Charmaine thought she'd hidden. "Dorothy?" she answered, voice cracking. "Is it really you?" "Yes, honey. And I need your help." By noon, Edna had driven over in her little green sedan and hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. She brought her son, Reggie, a lawyer who specialized in elder protection and property disputes. I showed him the documents from the metal box. The deed, the will, the notarized transfer of ownership. Reggie stared, then nodded slowly. "Mrs. Linwood, this house belongs to you. And if they're living here against your wishes, you have every legal right to evict them." The word echoed. Evict. They put me in a basement like a burden. But I was about to remind them I built this home, with my hands, my heart, and my husband's sweat. For the first time in months, I smiled. We filed the legal paperwork that same day. Reggie made sure it would be in motion before Nathan and Charmaine returned. Edna brought groceries, helped me bathe, and even brought my old Sunday dresses from storage. We laughed. We cried. I felt human again. But the best part? The sheriff's office said they'd deliver the notice of eviction personally. It would be the first thing they saw when they stepped out of that Uber from their spa retreat. A yellow slip taped right to the door. If you're loving this story and rooting for Dorothy, don't forget to like and share this video. Stories like hers deserve to be heard. And if you've ever felt silenced or betrayed, subscribe for more powerful voices like hers. What Nathan did when he saw the eviction notice, no one was prepared for. ChatGPT said, "Here is chapter 4 of your story. My son locked me in the basement because his wife didn't like my look, so I bought the house from under them." Chapter 4. It was nearly sunset when their Uber pulled into the driveway. I was standing inside the living room, dressed in one of my floral Sunday dresses, sipping tea like I'd never been gone. My silver curls were brushed. My spine still ached, but I stood tall. Nathan stepped out first, laughing at something on his phone. Then he saw it. The bright yellow paper taped to the door. He froze. Charmaine was behind him, dragging a suitcase, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She squinted at the paper, then snatched it off the door. "What the hell is this?" she snapped. Nathan took it, reading slowly. His face lost all color. His mouth opened, then shut. For once, he had no script. I stepped forward and opened the door. "Welcome home," I said gently. "While it still lasts." Nathan blinked. "Ma, what is this?" "It's an eviction notice," I said. "From the rightful owner of this house." Charmaine scoffed. "You? You're not serious. We let you stay here out of pity." "No, dear," I said, voice steady. "You locked me in a basement like a forgotten code. And you forgot one thing. Paper speaks louder than pity." I handed Nathan the copy of the original deed, with my name signed clearly at the bottom. "My husband left this to me. Not to you. Not to your wife. And I've decided I don't want my abusers living in my home. Charmaine exploded. You can't do this. Nathan, say something. But Nathan just stood there, staring at the document. At me. At the suitcase in his hand. I didn't think you'd remember, he whispered. I took a breath. I didn't forget. I forgave you for years. But forgiveness is not permission. The sheriff's car pulled up moments later, lights off but presence undeniable. Officer Hendricks stepped out with his clipboard. Afternoon, ma'am, he nodded at me. Mr. and Mrs. Linwood, he said to them. You've got 72 hours to vacate this property. Any dispute can go through the county. But as it stands, this house is no longer yours to occupy. Nathan looked like he might fall. Charmaine was already red in the face. But I didn't gloat. I didn't yell. I just stepped back into my house and shut my door. Behind it, I cried. Not out of sadness, but out of relief. I had stood up for myself. But this story wasn't over. Because the press caught wind of the eviction. And what happened next would put my face on every screen in town. The article appeared 3 days later. Local woman evicts own son after basement confinement allegation. I hadn't spoken to any reporters. I hadn't asked for attention. But someone at the sheriff's office had tipped off a local columnist who'd once gone to church with Edna. And suddenly, my quiet act of reclaiming my home became public news. My phone rang off the hook. Most were reporters. A few were lawyers. Some were strangers who just wanted to say, thank you. I didn't know what to say back. For most of my life, I didn't think my voice mattered. Now it echoed. Charmaine and Nathan? They didn't take it well. They moved into a budget hotel across town and immediately filed a countersuit, claiming emotional damage and elder confusion. But Reggie, sweet Reggie, handled them like a seasoned wolfhound. He presented the paperwork in court, including photos of the basement, time-stamped audio recordings I had taken with Edna's help, and even receipts showing Nathan had diverted utility bills into my name without permission. The judge dismissed their claim in less than 10 minutes. What stung the most, though, wasn't the legal defeat. It was the loss of control. You see, for years, I had been their emotional hostage. My kindness used against me. My need to feel needed turned into a leash. But now? The town knew. And so did my neighbors. I couldn't go to the grocery store without someone offering to push my cart. Young people stopped me in the street to shake my hand. Elderly women whispered, "You're braver than all of us." One woman even mailed me a quilt that read, "We rise when we reclaim." Still, not all attention was warm. One night, I found a dead rose taped to my front gate. The next morning, my garbage bin had been tipped over and covered in ketchup. Charmaine style. She still wanted to humiliate me, still tried to shame me into silence. But shame no longer fit me. That morning, I brewed tea, sat on the porch, and waved at every passerby. Because I had earned that porch. Because this was my home. Because I no longer had to hide. And because what I planned next would make sure no elderly woman in this town ever felt disposable again. It started with a notebook. A plain, spiral-bound one I found in the attic while searching for old photos. Inside were empty pages, hundreds of them. And for the first time in my life, I decided to fill them with my story. I wrote down everything. From the first day I married Thomas Linwood, to the final time Nathan slammed the basement door behind me. I wrote about my hopes, the mistakes I made as a mother, and the pain I swallowed when my son chose silence over love. I called the manuscript Under My Roof. Reggie helped me upload the story to a senior blogging site he managed for advocacy work. We didn't expect much. But the post went viral overnight. Thousands of shares, tens of thousands of comments. Women from across the country wrote things like, "You gave me courage. I haven't spoken to my kids in 5 years, and now I finally feel seen. You're not just a survivor, you're a teacher." That notebook became a movement. 1 week later, I received an email from a publishing company. They wanted to publish my story and give it nationwide distribution. Proceeds would go to me, and they even offered to help set up a foundation in my name. But I said I wanted something else. I asked them to help fund a home. Not just any home, but a safe space for elderly women escaping abusive family members. A place where someone like me, 10 years ago, could go without shame or fear. We named it the Linwood Porch. A home with wide steps, rocking chairs, gardens, and not a single basement in sight. By the time the grand opening came, my face had been on 3 talk shows and the front of our county newspaper. I didn't enjoy the fame, but I cherished what it meant. That I had mattered. That I had lived. That I had overcome. And on the ribbon-cutting day, Edna held my hand. Reggie stood at my side. And as I cut through the red silk, I thought about the woman I was 6 months ago.
Scared.
Silenced.
Trapped.
Now I was a voice.
A name.
A place. And yet, Nathan and Charmaine weren't done. Just as I stepped back into the crowd of supporters, I saw their faces near the curb, watching. And what they did next would be their final mistake. If you believe no one should suffer in silence, especially our elders, please share this story. Let the world hear it. And subscribe for more real voices rising from the shadows. They came with cameras. Charmaine had always been dramatic, but this time she was calculated. She had hired a social media justice advocate to film a live confrontation at the Linwood Porch. She wanted sympathy. She wanted an audience. And she wanted to paint me as a cruel, senile old woman who had stolen her son's birthright. She stood outside the gates with a microphone, crocodile tears running down her cheeks. This used to be our home. My husband built this life, and now his mother's trying to erase him, she cried. Nathan didn't speak. He just stared at me through the iron bars. Inside the porch, the women we had taken in, Mary from Iowa, Judith from North Carolina, and sweet Delilah, who could barely walk, watched in silence. You gonna let them do this to you? Charmaine shouted. You can't undo blood. I stepped forward. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply raised a folded paper. This is your son's signature, I said calmly. Signed when he transferred ownership to me. You might have forgotten the night you got him drunk, but the law did not. She faltered. I turned toward the camera. I built this place not for revenge, but because I know what it's like to feel invisible, to be locked away and told you're a burden. The online crowd watching the live stream exploded with support. Comments poured in. One woman wrote, "She's our hero." Another said, "You're not invisible. You're a revolution." Charmaine screamed, throwing the mic. The so-called advocate packed up and left. And just like that, they were exposed for what they were, entitled bullies losing their last bit of control. The next day, my story aired on national TV. Not for ratings, but as a mirror to a broken system that forgets the very women who raised it. But it wasn't over yet. I had one final move. One that would honor the past and protect the future. What I did next would change not just my legacy, but the fate of thousands of women like me. I took the check from the publisher and walked into a law office I never imagined I'd visit. I sat across from a woman named Clara Fields, one of the few estate lawyers in the state who specialized in elder asset protection. She had once helped her own mother fight off a family trying to steal her pension. I want to do something bold, I told her. She nodded. You've already done that. No, I said. This time, I want to make sure no one like me ever gets locked in a basement again. Ever. Together, we created the Porch Fund, a legal trust that turned the Linwood Porch into a permanent, self-sustaining nonprofit. It couldn't be sold. It couldn't be taken. Not even by blood. I gave up legal ownership, but not my presence. I stayed on as founder and voice. Every new woman who walked through the doors shook my hand. Many hugged me. A few cried into my shoulder. But it was at our first public fundraiser where everything came full circle. They invited me to speak. The auditorium was packed. City officials, state representatives, women's groups, survivors. And in the middle row, just behind the cameras, sat Nathan. Alone. He didn't look angry. He looked lost. I stood on the stage, hands trembling slightly, and told the truth. How I had once believed love meant silence. How I let myself be hidden. How the greatest lie I ever believed was that I was too old to matter. And then I paused. I looked right at him. I forgive my son, I said. Gasps echoed. Even Clara looked surprised. But forgiveness, I continued, is not a door back into my life. It's a door out of my past. I walked off the stage and never looked back. That night, dozens of women reached out. One said, "Because of you, I'm leaving my abusive daughter's house tomorrow." Another said, "I'm writing my story next." The ripple had begun. I was no longer just the woman in the basement. I was the storm that broke the lock. If this story moved you, don't scroll past. Subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who needs to remember they still have a voice. And if you're that someone, let this be your first step back into the light.
The seasons changed.
Fall arrived with crisp air and amber leaves brushing the porch steps. The Linwood porch now held 20 residents. Some had come from states away. All had scars, but also light.
We weren't just surviving.
We were thriving. Each Sunday, I hosted tea on the back patio. No matter your pain, you were welcome to sit, sip, and speak. We called it Sunday Silence, a place where words weren't forced and healing wasn't rushed. Then one Sunday, Nathan came again. This time, not with anger or cameras. No Charmaine. Just Nathan. He sat quietly on the edge of the crowd, watching the women laugh over lemon tea and warm bread. When it ended, he approached. "I lost everything," he said. I looked at him.
He'd aged.
Not in years, but in regret. "I know," I replied. He swallowed. "I didn't come for anything. I just wanted to say, I remember the songs you used to hum in the kitchen. I didn't forget you." I nodded, the ache in my chest soft but still there. "Then I hope you never forget what you did either," I said gently. "And I hope it teaches you how to never do it again." He didn't cry, but he looked like a man who might, once he got in his car. As he left, one of the new women, Donna, asked me, "Was that your son?" "Yes," I said. "But I don't belong to him anymore. I belong to myself now." Later that year, the Linwood porch expanded. A second house opened in the neighboring town. Reggie left his job to help manage it full-time. Edna became our wellness coordinator. And I, Evelyn May Linwood, became living proof that it's never too late to rewrite the ending. At age 84, I received a letter from a high school teacher in Michigan. She had made my story part of her curriculum for students studying generational trauma and healing. "I want them to know," she wrote, "that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it survives in silence until it decides to roar." And now I pass that roar to you. To every grandmother who's been silenced. To every mother who's been erased. To every woman who's ever been locked in a metaphorical basement. You can rise. You can rebuild. You can outlive their cruelty and still choose grace. Because dignity has no age limit. And justice can knock quietly on a porch and still change the world. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If Evelyn's story touched your heart, share it. Let her voice echo in every home that needs it. And subscribe to this channel for more true tales of strength rising from silence. It was winter again. 2 years had passed since the day I stood on that stage and told the world I forgave my son. The snow outside the Linwood porch shimmered like quiet forgiveness, coating everything in soft white. But inside, something was stirring. I had just finished my morning tea when Donna came running down the hallway, her boots squeaking on the floor. "You've got mail," she said, breathless. But not just any mail. She handed me a thick envelope, cream-colored and hand-addressed. I adjusted my glasses and slowly opened it. Inside was a letter and an invitation. The White House. The First Lady's office had selected me for a national honor, recognizing senior women who had turned personal pain into public healing. My name would be etched alongside women I had only ever admired in silence. There was a small ceremony. Nothing grand, just a room full of those who had turned tragedy into purpose. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't prepare notes. I walked to the podium, holding only a single photo, one taken the day I moved into Nathan's basement. My eyes in that image told a story that words never could. I stand here today, I began, as a woman who was once treated like a secret. Locked away, ashamed of her face, her age, her reflection. The room was quiet. But now I understand something. Dignity isn't given by others. It's reclaimed, brick by brick, breath by breath. I lifted the photo. I keep this not as a reminder of what they did, but of what I survived. The applause came slowly, then thundered. Afterward, a young woman, barely 20, came up to me with tearful eyes. "My grandma watches all your stories on YouTube," she said. "She left a toxic home because of you." I hugged her. We stood in silence. That silence was everything I had once begged for. When I returned to the Linwood porch that evening, the women had baked a cake. On top it said, "Our Lioness." I laughed, I cried, and I told them what I always tell them. Your story isn't over until you say it is. That night, I sat by the window, watching the snow fall. I wasn't alone. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't just Evelyn Linwood, the mother, or the widow, or the victim. I was a builder, a breaker of silence, a witness to what happens when one woman dares to unlock the basement door and chooses to walk out. Thank you for staying till the very end of Evelyn's journey. If this story gave you strength, share it. If it reminded you that your voice matters, subscribe. And if you're still locked away, physically or emotionally, remember, your key may be just one decision away. You are never too old to be free.